Hey guys, good afternoon. This is Samir, and I'm going to be giving you a quick update as to what's going on in the market for this week. So let's get started. In terms of economic events, we definitely have a lot of red calendar events going into the week of the 16th of August. So first and foremost, we have some red calendar events at FOMC meeting minutes. Not as big. We have unemployment claims coming out on Thursday. Uh, Flash manufacturing, super important to kind of give you a leading indicator as to how manufacturing is going, services as well. Now, the big thing that we have kind of going into the later end of the week and through the weekend is the Jackson Hole Symposium. This is a 3-day event, happens every August, and it's one of the bigger economic events in the year. And I kind of was doing some investigating into it, found some interesting posts. Now, this was something I found um, on X. It was posted by, it's a stock from Stock Charts, and it was just posted by an individual on X. Well, first, let me preface by what is Jackson Hole. Now, the Jackson Hole Economic Symposium, it's an annual meeting, as I mentioned, happens usually in the latter end of August. Um, it's hosted by the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. It brings together central bankers, finance ministers, top economists, and market leaders around the world, and they kind of discuss global economic issues. Now, it's really important because it kind of sets the tone for policymakers in the event of future monetary policy, usually involving interest rates, inflation, financial stability. Now, a market really pays attention to this event because uh, depending on the tone from the sitting Fed chair, so in this instance, Jerome Powell, it'll kind of set the tone for the overall market as well. Now, if they come out pretty hawkish, you may see some form of a correction if they start kind of communicating about inflation control, tighter monetary policy. You know, we did have that uptick recently for the month over month. This will lead to an expectation reset in the market because the market's essentially pricing in things. Um, and kind of after doing some investigating, because I thought, this is interesting. Like, is this really true to where we're kind of getting the market topping off in some form of a correction? And the results were that usually the initial 1 to 5 days after the summit is kind of mixed, but there is a recurring pattern where in late August and into early September, there's weakness in the market. Now, this is a bit of seasonality as well sprinkled in there because the month of August and the month of September seasonally tend to be the weakest months of the year in terms of performance. Um, but when I went back through time, I noticed that between 2015 to 2023, um, usually formed some form of topping where we may have rallied a bit after within the first 1 to 5 days of the reaction to the summit. But usually there seems to be some form of sideways correction or downward correction. So I want to bring that to your attention. But now going into the market itself. Now, we kind of had a mixed bag. Friday close, a lot of major companies were kind of uh, ended in the red. But I do want to underscore UNH. Now, in terms of the weekly performance, it just blew everything out of the water. It closed 24% on the week. And this came out because a lot of institutions acquired UNH last quarter. And kind of was mentioning in my last video how this is probably a really good area to buy into this company because it's a well-established company. It has a moat, good free cash flow, one of the biggest employers in the United States, and they just had a sizable correction of over 50% over the last quarter. So, in my opinion, if the financials looked right and everything looked right, why would I not buy into it? Overall, I kind of want to go through and look at each company real quick. So I'm going to start with the SPY index. And So the hourly did squeeze to the downside. You know what? Let me get rid of this real quick. And we still have that 2 hour squeeze. We have this area here that's still kind of an inefficiency because the price has yet to actually fill this area. Now, is it possible for price, which is already on a decline right now, to come down here, test this level, um, which which would be testing and retesting the previous all-time highs and squeeze down here? I think so. Does it have to? No, not at all. It can just continue to move upwards. But on the daily close, it was red. Um, sellers are kind of in control. We didn't get kind of like a massive upper shadow, so the selling pressure is there for the SPY, and the same is true for the Qs as well. But again, same kind of rule, same kind of idea. We still have the 2 hour squeeze did fire on the Qs, but we have this 4 hour gap. Now, is it possible for price to come and fill this 4 hour gap? Absolutely. Does it have to? No, it does not have to. Um, it is something on my radar, especially considering next week is going to be chock full of economic events. Probably going to have some volatility going into it. This is also the time of the year where we do experience an uptick in volatility. Usually near the later weeks, near the end of in the end of August, starting September, and kind of peaking off in that October in terms of seasonality for the VIX. So Meta finished green, which is pretty good. Nvidia have earnings coming soon. It's kind of going sideways. Kind of can see you kind of can see it on the daily time frame, like this diamond formation happening. It's not that big of a formation. Um, would I be surprised if, they do well in earnings, but there is a sell-off? Not really, just because of the extent at which it's been uptrending. Um, it's almost at like a 90-degree uptrend, you know. So it wouldn't surprise me, but does it have to? It does not have to. It can continue to uptrend the way it's uptrending. Um, I know that 200 is a very massive level, but it's also a psychological level. This 200 level coincides with about $5 trillion market cap. So it's definitely a super important level. Um, but you always want to take a step back. Right? Like, this is kind of the technical aspects of it. You want to think of the company as a fundamental. You're buying a company. So what are the fundamentals of the company? The company does really well providing a service and a good that's very much in demand for the um, AI phase, AI age, bubble, whatever you want to call it. Um, so that's kind of, we would take a look at the technicals, but you always want to take a step back and look at the company as a whole. Does it have sound financials? Um, is this a fair rated value for the company? And I think so, but I am kind of sitting on the sidelines. I would like for it to correct a little bit before buying in because I kind of missed some of this run. Microsoft. Microsoft. Microsoft is doing pretty well. It did have that bounce on that level that I was thinking about. So I did fill this area here. It bounced, and we kind of did see it actually bounce pretty high. Went from like 515, 517 to 530, about 15-point move to almost 3% move. It's still kind of consolidating here. Now, if we look at the weekly print, now it's starting to get a bit of a concern. Um, it looks like we may be entering a different phase in our trend, where we had our impulse move to up and kind of distributed here, and we may be having a correction down. And I say this because look at these wicks. Sorry about it. look at these wicks. These are rejection wicks, okay? Now, another thing is, look at the way we're closing. We're closing in the red. So we're going up, and then sellers are coming in through, and then we're closing red. It's another story. So this was the earnings week, where you gap up, come down, but then finish strong to the close. But that's not happening the last 2 weeks. So that is kind of signaling sellers are stepping up. Sellers are kind of in control. There is this level here that is important for me on the weekly time frame. It's an inefficiency on price. Um, does it have to come here right away? No. But if it was to consolidate here sideways a bit more and then come in here maybe like mid-September, it would kind of be caught right here on the 20-week moving average. So that's kind of something I'm looking at on the weekly time frame. But in terms of monthly prints, it's not too bad. Um, this might set up something like kind of like a bull flag of sorts. And as long as we consolidate over this range on the monthly time frame, probably see that I think that the price target's anywhere from 600 to 650, depending on some analysts. But again, you want to always take a step back. We're just doing the technicals right now, and it's very hard to kind of think of, okay, well, where's price going to go? Where's price action going to lead to? Fundamentals of the company and the geopolitical spectrum far outweighs technical analysis of a company. And again, this is just a company that I definitely want to buy and hold, and I kind of missed some of this run up. So if there is any form of a correction, this would definitely be one of the companies that I would be buying. Apple. Apple broke this range where it was kind of this weekly trend here, and it was in this range right over here quite some time. One can make the argument there was this bear flag right here, continuation, bounce off of the 200-week moving average. But more importantly, what it did was actually close this gap here from the previous year. If we were to go on a yearly time frame, and kind of bounce off from there. And right now, let me remove that, remove this. Right now, we have pretty interesting spot to be in because we just broke out. Technically, buyers are still in control. I kind of paint this on the weekly time frame as indecision because yeah, buyers are in control, but look at other topping formations where we kind of had a similar instance here. Here's one instance, right? Here's one instance. Here's the other instance. Now, it's not as prominent as the other times, but it's still something to make note of in terms of pattern recognition. It is flagging, which is good. Kind of. I keep pressing the wrong thing. Jeez. It's kind of flagging over here. But again, the last 2 days, we do see sellers are kind of in control, where opening print, set a new high, set a new low, but close to opening print, close to opening print. It would be a lot better. I would feel more confident in holding my position if these were green candles rather than the red. So, in my opinion, I'm kind of waiting for. I closed out a little bit, okay? Like, even though I have a lot of theta on it, um, because if it does go sideways, I don't want to just have theta, theta burn. Or if it does come back, pull back real quick and fill this and retest this level, I'll just kind of buy in. But, you always want to be comfortable risking what you want to risk. And overall, I tend to just hold shares, but there was this squeeze on the weekly time frame, and we were going into earnings. So I figured, there might be something here, which is kind of why. Um, in terms of, if you look at it on the monthly time frame, which is kind of what I usually do with the bigger companies, it impulsed after consolidating and retesting previous all-time highs. Now we had this impulse to the downside, and we may see a continuation of that move, of that measured move, year end. Maybe not necessarily year end, but you know, who knows? It can be year end. It can be maybe first quarter of next year, second quarter of next year. You always want to take note and have a buffer in terms of time. But very bullish on Apple in terms of everything they do. President Trump met President Putin in Alaska this past weekend, and it was a really interesting thing to watch in terms of the summit. This was the first time they met in over 6 years, and it looks like people were saying how this was one of the lowest points of communication between the United States and Russia since maybe the Cold War. So I think having that open dialogue was super important. Now I saw on Twitter or on X, I guess, a lot of people kind of mentioning like, oh, how much is it going to be in terms of tax dollars? Nothing of fruition came out from this. And you know what? In my opinion, look, I think diplomacy isn't cheap, okay? Freedom is not free, right? And you honestly, you can't knock a guy for trying. And the president is taking strides to secure peace and security throughout the world. And I saw this one snippet where, people were kind of mentioning how, uh, what deals was it that President Trump had brokered? And, I was like, you know what? I think there are a few. So I took to AI, and this was created by Microsoft Copilot, but I did my due diligence. They were the sources were cited, and I went through and I read each source independently. One, two, three, four, five, six. There were seven that were actually brokered and successfully brokered. And then there's the eighth one, which will be Ukraine and Russia, hopefully. Um, but as you can see here, there was Armenia and Azerbaijan, Rwanda and Democratic Republic of Congo, Thailand and Cambodia, India and Pakistan, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, Serbia and Kosovo. Um, you know, while reading some of these, it was so interesting that numerous leaders were nominating President Donald Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize. Leaders from Cambodia, Israel, Armenia, and I kind of took another step into this. I was like, wow, like, what other presidents or like who in the past have kind of done something like this? And President Jimmy Carter brokered the Camp David Accords, Egypt and Israel. Woodrow Wilson, the League of Nations post World War One, it's pretty big. Bill Clinton, President Bill Clinton helped negotiate the Oslo Accords. President Barack Obama signed the New START Treaty. Even Ben Franklin, with the Treaty of Paris. But, to this magnitude, to doing 7 to 8 peace treaties over the course of seven months, that's a peace treaty every month. So it's a very massive magnitude when you actually take a step back and look at the objective, like just the facts of it. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And I was just taking X recently, and it looks like President Zelensky is set to meet with President Trump, um, just this week. So it's really interesting, and hopefully they can come to a mutual agreement for all parties involved, and they can, this 3-year war, they can kind of set this war behind them, and everyone can kind of just move forward. Uh, so yeah, that kind of was just my 2 cents on it. Yeah, maybe get some flack from it or whatever. But in my opinion, you can't really hate somebody for trying. Um, that said, guys, that's kind of all I have for you in terms of this week. Please let me know, like, comment, let me know what you think, and have a great rest of your week.